I have to apologize in advance because this gospel is one of the greatest gospels ever, and there are more books written on it than probably many of the other gospels. We can't possibly touch everything. There are themes on baptism, there are themes on history of Israel, there's themes on worship, lots of things. And so I have like 15 homilies I want to say, but I got to focus on the one that I think God is calling me to give you tonight, and that's on memory. So pray that I can remember it. Memory is really important. If you can't remember anything, then you can be controlled by anyone. This is what Orwell talked about in 1984. Like, they completely changed the history books, they changed all the books, they changed everything so that people had no access to the past, so they could be controlled by the present, by whoever was in power. That's, in fact, you look at society right now, they're hoping you don't remember what happened these last couple of years. They're just hoping, because it's coming out, right, that they've been lying the last 2-3 years. And they're hoping you've forgotten what they said on TV. But thankfully, we have video for now. But the fact of the matter is, friends, like, this is not some idea theoretically. It's happening right now. Memory is so important. If you don't remember things correctly, you will make wrong decisions for the future. And that's not just politics, that's your life, right? So oftentimes, I run into people who they are plagued by memories from the past, and they're remembering things really in the worst possible light. And I'm like, that didn't happen. Yes, it did. And I was like, sometimes I go to family reunions, and I'll remember something, and I'm like, that's not what happened. And we fight about it. Do you ever have that? Because their recollections are very different, aren't they? And you're like, well, that can't be correct. Well, what's happening here? Memory is a power of the soul, and it can be corrupted by devils or by angels, right? It also has a psychological component, and you can corrupt it yourself through negative self-talk. I've seen this happen also, right? So, friends, memory is absolutely vital for our Christian life and for our freedom. In fact, a lot of people don't believe in God because they don't have any good memories of him. All their memories of God or of church are horrible, and so they never want to go back. Have you ever met friends like that? Maybe you've been like that in your past. What's the solution to this? We need to have a healing of our memories. Because I believe firmly, and I think it's borne out by the scriptures, that the principal way Satan attacks us is through our memory. What's the first words that he has in the Bible to the woman? Did God really say that? He's questioning her memory. And what is he implying? He's implying that, well, God didn't actually mean it that way, did he? God actually meant it in the worst possible way. He's actually not giving you a commandment of life. He's giving you a command of death. If you want to be free, you got to take it for yourself, right? We've talked about this, yes? It plays out in the first reading, too. Listen to this. This is so great. This is why it just stuck out to me. In those days, people are thirsty, and they grumble against Moses, and they say, why'd you bring us out here? Was it to die in the desert? Was that why God brought them out in the desert? First of all, who brought them out? Was it Moses? No. Who brought them out? God. So they already forgot that. It wasn't Moses. It was God. Remember those plagues, those 10 plagues in a row? Like really bad plagues that just completely decimated Egypt. That was not Moses. Moses was the mediator holding the stick. But God did the work, yes? Did they forget so quickly? It was God. And why did he do it? Because they begged him to. Right? They were dying. They were slaves in Egypt, and they cried out to God, and God heard them, and he sent Moses to save them and to bring them out into the desert to be a people peculiarly his own. And right now they're like, did you bring us out here to die? This is not even a few days after leaving Egypt. Short-term memory. Right? How is this possible? How is this possible? Because the devil attacks our memories, or we do it ourselves because of our own wickedness. Remember, the people are wandering around the desert for 40 years thinking about how the food was so much better in Egypt. They won't let it go. Remember that? There's manna coming down from heaven, but it's not steak and melons. I wish we were back in slavery. Then we'd at least have melons to eat. Are you kidding me? Wake up! But they're remembering it wrong. They were slaves. It's like addicts, right? How many have addicts in your family, right? It's horrible when you have alcoholism in the family or you have drug addiction in the family because they are trapped in the prison of their mind and they remember things incorrectly. They're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Yes, it was. And when they're distanced from it and they're jonesing for the next drink, they're like, oh, this time it'll be different, right? No, it won't be. But they don't remember it correctly. That's why the Bible over and over and over again is giving us the example of Israel. And we're like, they're so stupid. They're so dumb. How did they keep forgetting? It's like, that's you, dummy. You are Israel, because I guarantee you there are things in your life you keep going back to, even though you know they're not good for you, because I do it too. We all do this because sin is a forgetting of who we are and of who God is. Does any of this make sense? See how memory is so important for the Christian life? It's really important. Jesus comes to heal our memories. I've been saying Jesus is the model for everything. Jesus is also the model for mental health. Look at him. He has no resentment, guilt, shame. Nothing anyone does to him can penetrate his interior life because he's so firmly rooted. He never forgets who he is. He never forgets who God is. He never loses his cool 1 second. Isn't that amazing? I want to be like him. When you become more and more united to him, your mind becomes more and more healed, which is why I shared with you last week my vision for the parish and where I think we want to go. And we talked about retreat center. That's one component. The other component is a mental health clinic. Because I believe this very firmly, that the healing of our memories, right? It happens on retreats, but I've also been the beneficiary of great Catholic therapy, which helps to go to those places with real good tools to understand our memories and to combine that with grace, with a Catholic understanding of the person. It's transformative, but very few people do it, which is why we need to create it. I really believe God's calling us to this, friends, because we have a mental health crisis among our youth, which was only exacerbated by the last couple of years of isolation and lockdowns. I'll be dealing with mental illness the rest of my priesthood, right? It's a wave, a tidal wave of people who are just broken and traumatized, a whole generation of children that we don't even know the impact on them. We won't know it for a few years, but we're already starting to see the warning signs. I'm going to need a lot of help, right? We need good counselors. We need good therapists, because the fact is, it was a bad thing before. It's way worse now. Do you agree with me? I mean, brothers and sisters, this is a crisis. If you have a desire, if you're going into study for mental health, come talk to me, because a lot of the studies, the problem with them is that they are not good. They are based on a Freudian understanding of a person being just a bundle of sexual desires. That's not what we believe about the person. We need a Catholic anthropology. There's only a couple schools in the United States that actually train therapists in this. So come talk to me. I'd be happy to talk with you about this, because this is my passion. I really want us to start forming good Catholic psychotherapists here, both in English and in Espanol. Because if you think the problem is bad in English, it's way worse in Spanish. All the trauma of people coming over and how they've been abused at the border, they've been suffering with this for years in silence, and there's literally no help for them. So friends, I have a deep burning desire in my heart for this, and I hope you do too. But I want to look at the gospel and see how Jesus heals memory. It's really beautiful. First, I won't be able to get into every detail of it, but look at first what it's actually saying, and then we'll understand how it applies to the individual. He's first going to heal her as an image of a healing of the entire history of Israel, okay, and Samaria and the Gentiles. Okay, so this woman is not a Jew, right? And in fact, if you remember, if you're studying in the Old Testament, you may not have encountered it yet because we're not there yet, but in 2 Kings and beyond, we're going to see the Samaritans are the northern 10 tribes who remained, they were paganized for a while, and then they split off a little bit, intermarried, and then they kind of came back, but not really, right? So they had 5 different pagan oppressing reigns that they kind of intermarried with, right? The last one, well, 4, and then the last one was they're coming back to God, but they built a competing temple on Mount Gerizim. So they're saying, okay, we're kind of coming back to the old covenant, but we're not going to go to Jerusalem because we hate them, okay? And they hate us. So we're not going there. We're going to build our own temple over here that has nothing to do with the covenant relationship. So they're kind of pretend to play the Israelite religion, but they're still mixing it with other paganism, okay? So that's Samaria. That's why the Jews hate them so much, because they're kind of with Yahweh, but they're also with all the other gods, okay? So it's not a pleasant thing, all right? So they're like, these people are pagans, and they're pretending to kind of be Jewish when they like it, okay? So there's no love lost between the two of them. So that's why this woman is shocked when Jesus is asking her for a drink. Because remember, in the Old Testament, where do people go to meet their wives? By a well. And guess what? Jacob himself met his wife by a well, didn't he? And now they're sitting by Jacob's well. This is kind of like the beginning of a romantic comedy where you're just like, oh, I bet their girlfriend's going to show up right now. And sure enough, here she is. She walks into the scene, right? And it's like the laugh track on Seinfeld. Like, ha, 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 here she is, you know. Except it's the wrong woman. Jesus, the Jewish rabbi, the Messiah, and you're kidding me, a Samaritan woman, right? A woman from Samaria? No way, Jose. That is not the right wife for you, Jesus. But Jesus is saying, I came to bring all people back into the fold. I do actually want to be the spouse of everyone, not in the way you're thinking. I wish to be the spouse of every soul, no matter where you've been. Give me a drink. I desire to be your spouse. And she's like, what? Why are you asking me for water? Don't ask me for water. He meets her where she is, right? And then he talks to her about water. Hey, you want water? I got better water. Oh yeah, where are you going to get better water, huh? It's like, this water will run out and you're going to get thirsty. You'll have to keep coming back here. But I can give you a water that will never run out. Isn't this great evangelization? You know, if we start right here at the problem, which is you guys have a pagan temple over here and you need to get your right with God, get out of my face, man. I don't even know who you are, right? Jesus is meeting her right where she is first. Does that make sense? He's talking to her about what she's interested in, and then he's lifting her up higher so he can get to the real problem, which is you're worshiping pagan gods. That's the real problem. But we can't talk about that yet because you're not ready to hear it. You ever tried to talk to somebody about something they're not ready to hear yet? How well does that go? Doesn't work well at all, right? So Jesus knows that. He's the master evangelist, right? So he speaks to her about what she's interested in, which is she is thirsty. And she is not just thirsty, she is beaten down, bitter, broken, and ashamed. Why? Because she's going to the well at noon, high noon, when it's hot, and nobody in the right mind goes to get water then. She's doing it to avoid talking to anybody. She doesn't want anybody to see her. She doesn't want to talk to anybody. She's full of shame and bitterness, and to heck with all the rest of them, I don't want to see them. And she sees the guy there, she's like, oh, darn it. I bet he's going to talk to me. Like she's like hiding her face. Sure enough, he does. Jesus is annoying that way, okay? If you think Jesus is going to leave you alone when you're suffering, no, he's going to come up, hey, guys. He does. He comes up to her, of course, continues. And finally, when he gets her, it's like, hey, would you like to never come back here in the middle of the day when you're ashamed? Like that's the subtext, but he doesn't mention it because he knows already. But he's like letting her say, hey, I can give you a water where you'll never have to come back here again. Wow, okay, give it to me. Now she's open. And then he says, go call your husband, right? And then here's where you have the history of Israel. Yeah, you have five husbands, but the one you're with right now is not your husband. This is your history. You were with the Persians and the others, the Babylonians, the Chaldeans, etc. And now you're trying to come back to Yahweh, but you're really not with him yet. That is true. He's not your husband. And so you know why immediately she says, wow, boom, you read me, you got it. And now she immediately goes to that question. You people say you should worship in Jerusalem, but we worship over here. What's right? You tell me, smarty pants. He says, I'm so glad you asked. He tells her you're wrong. Listen to this. It's really clear. Like he doesn't water it down. He says this. Says, believe me, woman, the hour is coming when you're not going to worship the Father here or in Jerusalem. But I tell you, you're worshiping what you don't understand. We worship what we understand because we're part of the covenant. Salvation's from the Jews. You guys made up this religion. It's false. But listen, the hour is coming and is now here when the Father's calling both you guys, Jews and Samaritans, back to worship in spirit and truth, and that's in me. So this argument's pointless now. Yes, you were wrong, and you should have been back here, but soon that temple's not going to be around either. I'm the new temple, and so I'm the neutral ground, and if you come to me, there's going to be peace between all of you. Isn't that awesome? That's in fact what happens. The Catholic Church, founded by Jesus Christ, is the place where all nations can come together, no matter if you're Jew or Gentile, Greek, Slav, Italian, German, Norwegian, doesn't matter. You have a home in the new temple of the body of Christ if you receive the living water in baptism. The healing of the cultural memory of all of our cultures, because all of our cultures, whether you're from Mexico, El Salvador, Germany, France, Spain, England, United States, we all have colored histories, don't we? There's no culture that's blameless. Every culture needs the gospel. And so we enter into the culture of the church, into the culture of Jesus Christ, and he heals us as we become one with him. See how this applies to our lives as cultures, as a multicultural parish? We have to find our unity in Jesus. We can't have our tribalism like, oh, I'm American, and they're from over here, and they're El Salvadorans, they're Nicaraguans, and they're Mexicans, whatever, and we don't talk to them, right? No. They are your brothers and your sisters. They are part of your body, even more than your brother and sister. They're one with you, and you can't cut off your hand and say, I don't need you. Just because you have a mole right there, and I don't like it. Right? So the corporate healing that happens in the church is meant to now be in every individual person now. So if we zoom in a little bit and see how it applies to you for mental health piece, it's saying, look, we have to first come to trust that God is good, because a lot of people don't. So we have to meet people where they're at and love them where they're at and speak to them about their real desires and say, you know, that thing you're really desiring, it's written into every heart. We're all thirsty for something more. And you've been coming here to this same well. You've been coming to the computer. You've been coming to your girlfriend. You've been coming to this relationship that hasn't been working for years. You've been coming to the bottle. You've been coming to drugs. Whatever it's, wherever you've been for years, has it made you happy? No, I keep having to come back. What if I told you there is a place where all those desires can be satisfied? Would you like that? Come to him. The living water. He won't judge you as long as you're repentant and you're willing to lay down your past, lay down your sins, leave them behind. And what does she do right after she meets him, after she hears this? She leaves her water jug and she runs back to the city. Now she's integrated. Where before she wasn't willing to talk to anybody, now she's telling the whole world, hey, guess what? There's this guy who knew everything that I did. And he told me everything I did. And they're like, we all know what you did, honey. That's not news. But you see, what's changed is that now she is not ashamed of her past any longer. Now her past has become the occasion to proclaim God's mercy. Look at the kind of woman I was, and God reached out to me. Look at the man I was, and God chose me to be a priest. Crazy! Look at the person you are, and God chose you to be part of his church. Nuts! Why would he want you? It's no offense. I mean, some offense, but why would he want me? Why would he want any of us? None of us has anything that he wants. He's perfectly happy in himself. Why does he need you? Why does he need me? It's only because of love. And all of your particular wounds, mine too. That's why I'm not afraid to talk about the fact that I've suffered depression and anxiety and still suffer from those things and still have the freedom to go back and blow a whole day on the computer if I want to, right? But the fact of the matter is that I know in the depth of my heart that I am loved and that God offers me freedom if I will just configure my life to him. And I always have the freedom to go back to how I was. If you're an alcoholic, you always have the freedom to go back to the bottle, don't you? You're one drink away from returning, right? But the fact is that with God's grace and choice every single day to follow him, you can remain free. You can be integrated. You can be one with Jesus. You can be a saint. It is possible, no matter where you've been. Isn't that great news? That's what mental health looks like. Do you want it? Oh man, I hope so. I hope you'll journey with me. It's just the beginning, friends. There's a whole series on this, which I can't get into, right? Or don't even have prepared. So, but brothers and sisters, let's see in this woman ourselves. Wherever you've been, no matter how far away you've been, no matter what you think God thinks about you, you're wrong if it's negative. God's one attitude toward you is, I want you back. Look at the lengths he's going to go to get this woman back. Do you think he won't try to do the same for you? He's fighting for you right now. He's interceding before the Father in heaven, permanently saying, Father, mercy, Father, save them. They don't know what they're doing. Let's ask the Lord to integrate us. We can't change the whole world over there, but guess what? When you're integrated, then you're a credible witness to your culture. She became a credible witness because she was integrated and healed. If you want to do this, if you want to be a missionary, if you want to go out and spread the gospel, you've got to get healed yourself. Because otherwise you're going to say stuff and they're going to be like, look at you, you're a mess. The Lord loves us all, friends. I'm just so convinced of it. Each day I become more and more convinced of it. He's so good. I no longer believe because I've heard about it, but I have met him for myself, and I believe that he's the Son of God. I invite you to come meet him too. Come, Holy Spirit.